overwhelming number of accidents are preventable. Slipping on the dock, banging your head on a rigger, running a boat on the dock, or collisions, none of these would happen if we just took a little more time and stayed aware of our surroundings. If we look at major incidents, we usually find that there was a series of bad judgment calls early on, misjudging the weather, overloading a launch after a shell has swamped, or not following the traffic pattern. A boathouse and you go out on the water, you are entering worlds with rules and terminology that are not used in other areas of our lives. Knowing this vocabulary will help us be safe in the mixed nautical environment in which we operate. Along with terminology, you have to know the rules of the road, like who has the right-of-way and under what circumstances. What is the traffic pattern for the waterway that you are on? The rowing traffic pattern should be posted at the boathouse and understood and obeyed by everyone who rows on that body of water. The athlete is responsible for the entire boat, including the rowing station. As you move the boat in or out of the boathouse and on or off the dock, you must be aware of your surroundings. If you're moving a boat with or without a coxswain, you need to make sure that the people and equipment in the area are safe. Place the boat in the water, making sure you don't damage the rudder or skeg, and then check your station to make sure everything works correctly and parts are tightened. Check the footboards and make sure they are properly fastened to the boat, and the heel ties are tied. Seat rolls freely. The rigger nuts are tight, and oarlock closes and pivots properly. This will only take a matter of seconds on the dock, but can save minutes of repair time and help prevent needless accidents on the water. And a shell should never go on the water without a bow ball. These have saved many athletes from serious injuries. If there is damaged equipment, it should be fixed before being rowed again. Damaged equipment, at best, only gets more damaged while being rowed, and at worst can lead to accidents and injury. Many injuries to rowers happen because of bad technique. Gripping the oar handles too tightly can cause tendinitis, or slouching can cause back problems. Good technique will help prevent some injuries that are common to rowers. Don't talk while rowing. Focus on what's going on in your boat. Focusing on the boat and your boatmates will help keep it set and produce better rhythm. Wakes and waves present real challenges to rowers. Most pleasure boat drivers don't realize how vulnerable rowing shells are to wakes, and sometimes they slow down to be polite and only make their wakes larger. Being able to recognize wake size is important, and special care is needed. If the wakes coming towards you are higher than the gunwales, the crew should stop rowing, and the shell should be turned parallel with the wake. Lean away from the approaching wake and slightly lift the oar handles on the wake side. Taking this action will avoid having any part of the underside of the shell be unsupported by the water, which could cause it to split apart. If wakes are lower than the gunwales and widely spaced, you can continue to row without adjustment. If you are the cox or bow person of a straight boat, make sure that the others in the shell know the wake is coming. Turning in windy conditions can be very difficult. It takes a lot of time and energy to turn against the wind. Try to make the time your boat is perpendicular to the wind as short as possible. The longer you stay parallel to the waves when turning, you increase the likelihood for water to get into your boat. If there are whitecaps, you should never go out. If you row in water with a current, be aware that wind blowing against the current will increase wave size, and that rainfall can increase current. If you row in a tidal area, the water may move at dramatically different speeds depending on the tides. You need to plan your practice to accommodate travel time with and against the current. Always keep an eye out for a change in the weather, the thickening of clouds, a quick changing color of the sky, and the wind picking up speed are all indicators that the weather is changing. Lightning can be very dangerous for rowers. At the first roar of thunder or bolt of lightning, all boats should head for the boathouse if it is close by. Accidents are going to happen, some serious, some not, and you need to discuss some common problems that may occur at your rowing venue and decide on a plan of action for each. With a basic outline of how to respond, you can adapt to specific accidents more efficiently. Communication is critical in an emergency. As a rower, you need to know what signals to send to the coach to show that there is a problem, like waving arms, putting an oar in the air, or blowing a whistle. We are going to look at some common accidents and hazards that rowers need to be aware of and understand what action to take. A crab is when a rower's oar gets stuck in the water at the end of the stroke. They come in three sizes. A small crab can be corrected by forcing the blade out of the water and continuing to row. The medium crab will usually require the boat to stop as the oar handle has gone over the head of the rower and is now parallel to the boat. The rower will have to turn the blade so that it is flat on the water and then bring the handle back around to the rowing position and start again. The third kind of crab is the ejector. This is when the force of the oar handle pushing against the rower causes the rower to be thrown from the boat. The rowing shell needs to come to a stop, and the coach's launch should go immediately to the athlete thrown from the boat. The rowing shell and rigger should be checked for damage before letting someone row in that position again. If a coaching launch is not available to assist, give a strong kick of the legs, push yourself high enough so that your torso is draped across the rower's bench, pull yourself up and turn over so that you are now sitting on the tracks. Once back in the boat, provided there is no damage, you can continue rowing. Collisions between rowing shells and other objects are also common. After a collision happens between two rowing shells, the boat should not be pulled apart until a coach or person in a safety launch can assess the injuries and check the hull at the point of impact. If the hull is severely damaged, it can be better to leave the hulls together as the athletes are removed. If the damaged boats can be separated and rowed, they should be escorted back to the boathouse by the safety launch. If the shell hits a stationary object, again, check the hull for damage and assess whether the boat can be rowed safely to the boathouse. To avoid collisions, make sure all rowers know how to make an emergency stop. The coxswain will give the command, "Weigh enough, hold water," and the rowers will drag their blades as deeply in the water as possible without causing injury to themselves or the boat. If your shell swamps, that is, when the interior water reaches the gunnels, the "weigh enough" command is issued, and the coaching launch or other boats are signaled by waving your arms or shirt above your head or by raising an oar in the air. The coxswain will order you to untie. This is done as soon as possible so that your boat with its flotational ends doesn't break apart with your weight in it. Some manufacturers have built-in flotation spread throughout the hull, and rowers can stay in without damaging the boat, even if the boat is swamped. This is always preferable to getting in the water. Check with your shell manufacturer to see if your boat has this safety feature. If you think your boat may break apart, the rowers should carefully and quickly slip over the side in pairs, starting in the middle of the boat, and form buddies by pairs to keep watch on each other. The coxswain buddies with the stern pair. At this point, if rescue is not imminent, then the boat may be flipped over to provide a more stable flotation platform. You can then lie on the hull or hang on to your buddy across the hull. Rowers should never leave the boat. If the coaching launch is nearby, everyone should be thrown a life jacket, and it should be put on. In the rare case that the coaching launch is then swamped and there is no hope of imminent rescue, a decision needs to be made about swimming the boat to shore if that is possible. Decisions need to be made very quickly after everyone is in the water. It can be a very short time before judgment becomes clouded by the cold. No matter how close to shore, you should never attempt to swim to shore without the boat or Coast Guard approved flotation. If you are in another rowing shell and a safety launch is not close by, you should assist the distressed rowers as much as possible without putting you or your boat in any danger. Don't make the problem worse by creating more victims. If a victim needs flotation, let them use your boat as a rescue board if that can be done safely. Do not give them an oar. Oars with adjustable handles float for a very short time. USRowing recommends that all rowing shells that go out on the water be accompanied by a safety launch. Once you get your shell back to the dock, you need to bail or pump out as much water as possible before taking it out of the water. And always use more people than you would normally to take the boat out of the water. If the ends of the boat are filled with water, open the covers and take extra care lifting the boat so that the ends do not get unnecessarily stressed. Rowers are known to head out on the water in extreme conditions, practicing in freezing rain and racing when the temperature and the humidity are both over 95. Extra precautions are needed in these kinds of conditions. When it is cold, you need to be wearing proper clothing, including a hat. At least 50% of heat loss comes from your head. If it is going to rain or snow, wear as little cotton as possible. If cotton becomes wet or even very damp, it actively pulls heat away from your body. There are lots of great technical fibers available that will help move moisture away from your body and will retain heat even when wet. Being cold is not conducive to a productive practice or race. Conditions to watch for are feeling cold, turning bluish, shivering, numbness, apathy, lethargy, and disorientation and loss of mental capacity. Treatment for hypothermia depends on the condition of the person. Mild hypothermia victims who show only symptoms of shivering and are capable of rational conversation may only require removal of wet clothes and replacement with dry clothes or blankets. In more severe cases where the victim is semi-conscious as evidenced by appearing drunk and have stopped shivering, immediate steps must be taken to begin the rewarming process. If you should fall into the water, all efforts should be given to getting out of the water even if it means lying on top of the boat. Cold water robs the body's heat 25 to 32 times faster than cold air. If the weight of the rowers in a swamped shell threaten to break it apart, and thereby provide minimal flotation, and you are forced into the water, huddle together. It is possible to conserve 50% more body heat in a group. The greatest danger when rowing in cold weather is being in the water. Being in water below 80 degrees is potentially dangerous. It is extremely dangerous when below 50 degrees. Cold water immersion follows 4 stages, starting with cold shock, followed by swimming failure, then hypothermia, and finally post-rescue collapse. It is believed that the majority of deaths happen during the first 2 stages. The initial cold shock from falling into cold water provokes an immediate gasp reflex of up to 2 to 3 quarts of air or water if your head is submerged. During this period, concentrate on staying afloat with your head out of the water, and once your breathing is more normal and your heart rate is reduced, you will think more clearly and make better decisions. Next, swimming failure sets in after 3 to 30 minutes of immersion. Tests using Olympic swimmers showed how the body progressively becomes more vertical in the water due to loss of muscular coordination. This is why staying with the boat is critical. Physical exercise, such as swimming, causes the body to lose heat at a much faster rate than remaining still in the water because blood is pumped to the extremities and is quickly cooled. Immersion in cold water can quickly numb the extremities to the point of uselessness. Within minutes, severe pain clouds rational thought. Hypothermia can set in after 5 minutes in the water depending on water temperature, body type, size, insulation of clothing, acclimatization, level of exhaustion, and other factors.